they. Fear and anger towards they, them, becomes a cudgel to crush dissent and usher in fascism. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe. Today I'm going to talk about what I just said, the crushing of the dissent and fascism and how it's happening everywhere that you look. And from everything from the police state to the cracking down on dissent of media. But before I go into that, I want to remind everybody that the American economy is faltering. Things are becoming more expensive. Inflation is up. Donald Trump has not kept his central campaign promise of lowering the cost of living. He is using the office to bring himself and his family billions of dollars, but he's not delivering for the people who voted for him. Farmers, rural communities, the Latino population, they're not getting what they voted for. And the Latino population, after the immigration crackdown, a lot of the population retracted when they realized what is actually happening. All who voted for him to lower the cost of living are watching the cost of living go up on a daily basis, and that's not going to stop. Prices are going to keep on going up, wages are going to stagnate, jobs are going to become fewer and fewer to get, and we're going to come to a point where the economy falters in such a way that we cannot refute the fact that we are in a recession. And Donald Trump will blame somebody else for it. So remember that as we handle Donald Trump's assault on free speech and the free press, but also assault on the Fourth Amendment, on due process of law, on birthright citizenship, Donald Trump is trying to establish this one-party rule where he ignores Democrats. Democrat lawmakers are cut out from negotiations with the Republican majority in Congress. The executive branch not responding to Democrats' oversight requests, and the constant demonization of the left as the they, them evildoers. It's now a campaign to go after the radical left. The death of Charlie Kirk has been weaponized into a cudgel to crush dissent and speech through state pressure. And, you have to remember the slippery slope that we are on and going down. It started out with the April executive order of Donald Trump attacking and going after migrants with his executive orders and sanctuary cities under the pretense of immigration. And we are seeing lawsuit after lawsuit from California and other states that are challenging those immigration policies. Thousands and thousands of people are now in internment camps across the United States. Then in July, Donald Trump expanded that to mentally ill and homeless people and removing them from the streets and possibly confining them. And, what I find absurd, one of the things about Jimmy Kimmel's suspension is that Brian Kilmeade, who said that mentally ill homeless people should be put to death by involuntary lethal injection, he still has his show. And that's the great disparity of what is happening in American media today. The left is kowtowing media, and the right is creating false narratives and going as far as suggesting killing homeless citizens. There are thousands of homeless, mentally ill people who are U.S. veterans. And then you have this radical left, can be anybody. Anybody, and you know, scholars have written about this. Heather Cox Richardson has written about this. I believe that Karl Rove wrote about this, and that's in Heather Cox Richardson's Letters from an American that you should subscribe to and read every day. And it is anybody. Radical left can be anybody. Anybody that is not Donald Trump's posse is radical left. And now we see Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, saying that they're working on canceling leftists who celebrate Charlie Kirk's death. First of all, celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, celebrating it, I think is immoral and wrong, because a man died. He was killed by somebody who is mentally ill and who has hate in his heart. And it wasn't a they or them. It was a 22-year-old kid, Tyler Robinson, who came from a MAGA family, had a long history of gun use in the family, has a partner who is transgender, and we'll see what facts come out in trial. But it wasn't everybody who disagreed with Donald Trump's regime who was after Charlie Kirk. Remember that when you hear them. Every time you talk about, they can talk about radicalism, they can talk about extremism, but the moment they turn it to left, radical left ideology, they are attacking everybody who is not listening and adhering to their false narratives. And then Donald Trump declared on Truth Social that he's going to declare Antifa a terrorist organization when there's no legal mechanism for him to do that. And Antifa isn't an organization like the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers. It is an idea that you're anti-fascist. So when you are cracking down on anti-fascists, what does that make you? You are a fascist. And so this Antifa thing, much like the radical left thing, is a catch-all problem for all of us. Anybody who's going out to protest, the No Kings protest is on October 18th, and there could be an impact because of what Donald Trump is doing with going after Antifa and the radical left, where Donald Trump sends out DHS agents to disrupt and stop protests that are happening legally all over the country. You're going to have to, the dragnet of Antifa, anybody who is anti-fascist in our country, and the dragnet of the radical left makes anybody who opposes Donald Trump's propaganda the enemy. And then there is the overt attacks by the administration on the trans community, and not just the regime and / administration, the regime, but also on the far right. This hatred for the trans community because Tyler Robinson's roommate / partner is trans. There's this ongoing assault on the First Amendment by the state. Make no mistake. What happened with Jimmy Kimmel was that there's corporate merger that was going to happen that needed FCC approval. Brennan Carr, the head of the FCC, said that we can do this the easy way or the hard way, which is like mob talk. And moments later, Jimmy Kimmel was suspended. And I hope that he sues for breach of contract and walks away with millions of dollars, and then there is no non-compete provision to his payout. Then you have Colbert. Now, there's a threat has been laid for Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers. And mind you, these people, these comedians, are multimillionaires. So they will be okay, financially speaking. I mean, And I believe that this will only give them the platform they need to go onto independent media on YouTube and other platforms and blow up the independent media industry that is growing around the fourth estate, around legacy media, which has been co-opted and which has been compromised, except for a few rare entities like the New York Times and public radio, which Donald Trump has gone after and cut federal funding for. But if Donald Trump can, and his FCC can shut down legacy media, then he can silence anybody. Section 230 protects the liability of social media platforms like YouTube, and that is why we are able to exercise our First Amendment rights, although it is a private platform. And this is the gray area, and Donald Trump could very well silence us all with one phone call to the head of Google and shut down whichever content creators they want who make a living from these platforms. And we have to prepare for the possibility that we can be silenced quite easily. But that must not be the reason that we stop speaking up. Quite the opposite. We should speak up while we still can and find ways to speak up when Donald's fascist regime tries to silence us. Seth Meyers says about the whole idea of Jimmy Kimmel and Colbert and what's happening with suppression of free speech by government pressure. Remember, it is the government who cannot infringe on our free speech. And here, through Brendan Carr, who is a state actor, it is a government who influenced the removal of Jimmy Kimmel from the air. And Seth Meyers says, Trump promised to end government censorship and bring back free speech. And he's doing the opposite. And if you go check out Jon Stewart's latest segment on The Daily Show, I think it's brilliant what he portrays. And only by watching it can you properly understand it. So go take a look at it. And Stephen Colbert, who still has his show until May of coming next year, said, we are all Jimmy Kimmel. We are all Jimmy Kimmel. And when the attack is on free speech and the press by the government, like it has been on NPR, PBS, ABC, CBS, LA Times, Washington Post, Australian media, specific journalists like Amish Alcindor, John Carl, Donald Trump's legendary hatred for Bob Woodward. Remember, all of these things is an attack on our First Amendment, on our constitutional rights. And push back now while you can. And so, I'll leave you with a few other items quickly. I believe that Epstein Files list will come out, but it will come out through the survivors who compile their list, and then Representative Massey will read them out on the House floor so as to shield the survivors from legal liability, because Massey has the protection of the speech or debate clause, and anything that is read on the Congress's floor by a congressman is protected by the speech or debate clause. And so that is how I see that name coming up. And the other thing about Epstein is going to follow Donald Trump to his grave. He followed Donald Trump to London, to the Windsor Castle, and he's going to follow Donald Trump when he comes back, and it's never going to end. The other thing Professor Richardson pointed out, and I noticed that was odd, but I didn't make the connection that Professor Richardson made, which was Melania is holding Donald Trump's hand, which is quite unusual because most of the times that we have seen in clips, Melania Trump usually slaps away Donald Trump's hand. So it could be it could be that Melania has gone from trophy wife to crutch because Donald Trump's body is failing him and his mind has been failing him for quite a while. And with that said, I'd stop there today. Keep an eye out for everybody, for each other. Take care of each other. Don't spread propaganda. Don't celebrate the death of somebody. But don't hide from what Charlie Kirk advocated. And don't be scared to say that his assassination was a horrendous, horrendous thing. And Tyler Robinson should get what is coming to him, which is the full weight of the law. And justice should be served. With that said, thank you so much for listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. That is how the algorithms help me out. And I will talk to you soon.